Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. We're keeping things going. Training camp hype is still in full swing, so we're still going to be talking some of the top stories coming out of the team's training camps. We've got Daniel Jones struggles. We've got Odunze hype. We've got Justin Fields still practicing with the first team despite Russell Wilson returning to practice this week. All that and more coming up on Wake and Take. So go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right. Good morning, everyone here in the chat. We got Best Ball on call. We got Roberto. We got Bach, Gary, Semper, Dakota, Disco, Steve Scott, Toronto, Dave, Ryan, and Get Shrek, brah. Welcome in, everyone. Happy to see you all. If you're listening on the podcast feed later as well, thank you for listening. Again, guys, you could find the Wake and Take podcast via the link in the description. Before we talk training camp hype, I just want to show you guys one thing, one big news. I'm not going to talk too much about what this really means and answer any questions for you, but there is some huge news coming out today, and or at least just came out. You know, we'll have some more news, follow-up news, and information about this later. But while we have your attention, while you're captured, why don't we go and check out Fast Draft app over on any social media channel, but especially Twitter. Caption soon. Something big is happening with Fast Draft. So make sure you stay tuned for more information on that. You know that is a project very quietly worked on behind the scenes. Can't talk much more about that, but it's very exciting stuff. Fast Draft may or may not be on the way. So go follow Fast Draft all over social media. Tons of information probably going to start coming out over the next few weeks or so at Fast Draft app on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, on YouTube. Fast Draft app. There's even fastdraftapp@gmail.com. And you can go to the website fastdraft.app to find any answers to any questions that you had. So, all right, guys, let's talk some football. Let's get some football, and let's talk training camp. Let's legit just talk training camp. My favorite story, we'll just start with my favorite story because you guys know I love confirmation bias. We all do. Who doesn't like being proven right? And it seems that things are trending the way of Odunze and Caleb Williams to be the dynamic duo that we should have in drafting Odunze to be, and you know that we should have been expecting all along. I have been saying time and time again when it comes to this Bears offense and the wide receiver that you want to draft, I have been firm in that Odunze's the one I want. Well, here's a nice little highlight. Just incredible. Really just incredible. A beautiful throw from Caleb Williams. It right in between the two defenders. From Odunze, but it doesn't stop there. There's actually a few more highlights out there. Highly recommend checking it out. But Odunze and Caleb Williams are starting to finally make some noise at camp, and I couldn't be happier. Caleb Williams and Odunze are starting to catch up to the speed of the game. They just connected on another corner end zone touchdown, this time in red zone, 11 on 11s. Made it look easy. That is from G. Braggs Jr. on Twitter. Jacob Infante says Caleb Williams just hit Odunze for a touchdown in 11 on 11. The rookie connection is in full swing. Bears defensive coaches are not happy. And yet again, there's even more hype building up around Odunze and the Caleb Williams connection. If you go to 32 beat writers on Twitter, they just quote tweeted literally within the hour an article from one of the Bears beat writers. The Bears' top rookies once again stole the show during Tuesday's practice with their growing connection that makes for highlight-worthy plays. According to Jacob Infante, Caleb Williams connected with Odunze on a long touchdown, which left defensive coaches reeling. But that wasn't the only showstopper. The offense concluded practice with a strong 2-minute drill that was capped by Williams hitting Odunze in stride for a touchdown, according to Chris Emma. It's clear that Odunze is becoming a favorite target of Williams, and this dynamic duo could become something special. I don't know what else you want to hear. Like I've been saying and why I've been drafting Rome Odunze, it wasn't just because he was the cheapest, although that makes it easier. I just felt like we've seen time and time again, especially last year with Anthony Richardson and Josh Downs, CJ Stroud and Tank Dell. When rookie quarterbacks come into the league with another rookie wide receiver, especially 2 top 10 picks, especially ones as athletically gifted as Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, that's going to lead to a blossoming connection because they have rookie OTAs together, because they're learning the league together, right? Like everything is happening to them together. And off the field connection means just as much for targets as on the field connection. And so I have been drafting Rome Odunze way too much, probably. I would say I'm overweight, especially in redraft leagues and underdog drafts, but I don't care. Because especially towards the end of the season, Rome Odunze is going to be that 9th overall pick wide receiver. He's going to be electric. And him and Caleb Williams are going to be connecting at a very, very high level. I see all of the, the dissuadement, if you will, the fact that, Keenan Allen's there, DJ Moore's there. Sure, whatever, fine, right? Whatever, sure. There's plenty of opportunity for all of these wide receivers to feast. They're going to be a pass-happy offense. I mean, Caleb Williams is going to be up there in pass attempts. They want to get him acclimated. But even then, I hear the complaints like, oh, Shane Waldron. Shane Waldron is, of course, the offensive coordinator. And what happened last year? Well, he had a rookie wide receiver drafted in the first round. That was kind of, not really a big part of the game plan. And that was Jackson Smith-Njigba. Well, Rome Odunze is a different wide receiver than Jackson Smith-Njigba, drafted higher than Jackson Smith-Njigba. And if anything, Keenan Allen is a much better comp to Jackson Smith-Njigba than Rome Odunze is. I believe when I look at this offense, it's going to be DJ Moore and Odunze on the outside and Keenan Allen on the inside, just like we saw in Seattle last year, which means Keenan Allen, if anything, is the odd one out. It's almost like he's on a 1-year deal. And to further bring home the point, guys, the Bears just extended DJ Moore 4 years, $110 million, 82 of it guaranteed. Massive contract for that man. Massive, massive contract for him, and probably well-deserving given that he has produced time and time again, no matter the quarterback. Now he has Caleb Williams. Now he has some awesome threats on the other side too, making defenses not be able to focus on him. DJ Moore is gearing up for yet another 1,000-yard season, and the other receiver getting 1,000 yards right next to him, Rome Odunze in his rookie season, gonna break out. Him and Caleb Williams, that connection is going to flourish, and I cannot stress it enough. Draft Rome Odunze in redraft. Get him in Dynasty while you still can, because once he establishes himself as the alpha, there's no turning back. There really isn't. There's room for more than one wide receiver. In fact, there's room for all 3 of these wide receivers to produce, but it doesn't matter. Rome Odunze is going to produce regardless. The targets are going to go his way, and he's going to be a stud. Get him. So that's the Bears talk. Just wanted to talk that. Saw that highlight. Saw all the hype building up for Rome Odunze. And like I said, I just like confirmation bias. I just like it. It is what it is. So we'll go ahead and move on now to some more confirmation bias. The Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills right now do not have a depth chart per Joe Brady on the Bills wide receiver room. So still they're trying to figure out how they want to divvy up targets, how they want the wide receivers to be, put in the depth chart. I guess they don't have it. They don't have one. I do find that odd. I would assume that you'd at least have like a rough depth chart right now. But I also do understand that this is essentially a brand new room. I mean, Stephon Diggs is gone. Really, the only piece coming back is Khalil Shakir. So I understand that they're just trying to work out the kinks. We'll see how this develops. It just, again, shows that they have no idea what's going on for the targets right now. That's what camp is for. They're not expecting any one player to step up. They want everyone to step up. It's going to be a sum of parts, and a lot of it is going to rely on the shoulders of Josh Allen. Yesterday, however, if you're looking for some hype around a Buffalo Bills player, Keon Coleman seems to have stood out a ton yesterday, and really just this week in practice with the pads coming on. There's been multiple highlight catches from Keon Coleman. Lots of good news about contested catches as well. So that is really good. Hearing the connection with Josh Allen and Keon Coleman blossoming is exactly what you want to hear. He's a really good value right now, to be honest. I mean, we're talking about the wide receiver 1 on the Buffalo Bills, and he's going in the range of, some of the other rookie wide receivers like a Brian Thomas Jr. or Ladd McConkey, who of course have similar upside. But, it is just later in the draft, and you can take upside swings in that range, whether it be a Christian Watson, whether it be a Keon Coleman, Coleman, a Lab McConkey, a Brian Thomas Jr. You should be drafting those players in that range, not like Cortland Sutton, right? Like that's how you sync your roster. The Jerry Jeudy that's going in that range. Like, you don't draft those players. You draft the exciting rookies, and if they burn you, they burn you. You know, it is what it is. But the upside is undeniable for a player like that, especially with all the vacated targets in this offense. So I like Keon Coleman more and more each day, to be honest with you, which is nice. And then we're also hearing some more Tyrell Shavers hype. Again, just further bringing home the point that they are really, really looking into this wide receiver room to figure out what their identity is going to be. And well, Joe Brady says on Tyrell Shavers that his approach is where it needs to be. He's very accountable, and he can move around and play all positions. So more drum beats coming for 2023 undrafted free agent Tyrell Shavers. Again, he did stick around on the practice squad last year, so obviously the Bills liked something in his game, and it's going to be hard to crack the roster with it being such a crowded room last year with Stephon Diggs still there. Now he is getting some extra opportunity, so it's just another name to keep our eye on as we go throughout training camp. If he makes the first team, I can't see a reason why you wouldn't roster this guy. Again, I mean, I still don't think there's going to be a ton of volume for him, but, you know, end of roster stash for a potential Bills starting wide receiver. There are definitely worse things to put on your roster. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at with that. Next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. Not too much to add. Again, if you tuned into yesterday's show, I'm trying my best to kind of at least skip over some of the stuff that we've broken down a lot. So yes, when we talk about the Bengals, Mike Gesicki's looking good. Chase Brown is looking pretty damn good. But we're also hearing some positive drum beats, some more for some other players like Zach Moss now and Andre Yosis. Although I'm trying to find for Andre Yosis, this is what was said. Again, this is a player that I felt like we should have been drafting all offseason because of his athleticism. Even with Jermaine Burton being drafted, I felt like the guy who had 4 touchdowns last year was probably going to continue to be a part of the offense, given he was a rookie in a crowded wide receiver room and was still able to produce and make a name for himself. In fact, scored 2 touchdowns with Joe Burrow last year before he got injured. This was Andre Yosis. So anyway, some hype is continuing his way. For all the hype of third-round pick Jermaine Burton and his potential to make an impact filling the role vacated by Tyler Boyd, there's just no way to avoid the Andre Yosis hype. He's been the offensive star of camp, a trend that continued after his initial eye-popping debut playing in the slot for the first time in his life Wednesday. Receivers coach Troy Walters called him their 3rd best receiver last week, and he's looked like the best one on the field when Higgins is on his days off. Exactly what you want to hear. Literally just exactly what you want to hear. If you want to take a swing on a player on the Bengals that's really cheap, especially in the wide receiver room, it's got to be Andre Yosis, at least for redraft and probably for dynasty as well, as he's only in year 2. You know, we're here at Player Profiler. We care about athleticism. Andre Yosis, 4.43 40-yard dash at 6'3", 205 pounds, 91st percentile speed score, 88th percentile burst score, 80th percentile agility score, 96th percentile catch radius, 84th percentile college dominator, found himself at Princeton in college, so he's a smart dude and finished his junior year, so an early declare, only 3 years in college, 943 yards and 7 touchdowns as a junior. That's a pretty decent breakout. Awesome stuff. I mean, really a profile that we like. Andre Yosis, again, 1 target, 1 catch, 1 touchdown in week 6 with Joe Burrow. Week 8, 1 target, 1 catch, 1 touchdown in week 6 with Joe Burrow. They had a connection. It was a small connection. Again, not a lot of volume, 1 target, 1 catch. But to show that Joe Burrow trusted him in the red zone, week 6 in his rookie season, I think that that's something we have to take note on top of the athleticism, on top of the vacated targets. Andre Yosis is a great value right now over on Underdog. Wide receiver, 95, going in the 18th round. Compare that to Jermaine Burton. Just rave about the athleticism of Andre Yosis. And Jermaine Burton has some too. I mean, he's 6 foot, 196 pounds. Also runs that 4.4 40-yard dash. Also has the 91st percentile burst, but his speed score and his catch radius are lower. His college dominator is lower, and he never even had a year with over 800 yards, despite being in the league or in college 4 years. Yes, at the SEC. But, 2 years at Alabama, you would think that he would have something better than 800 yards and 8 touchdowns, especially last season. 2 years at UGA, you would think the same as well. Obviously a good athlete, a good profile, 3rd-round draft pick, nothing to scoff at. But it's going to take some time for a rookie to break out, and it's probably going to have to take a roster. Like, it's going to have to take an injury, or it's going to have to take, like, T. Higgins leaving, I believe, for him to move on. And that's, probably the plan here. But even then, Andre Yosis is there. Like, I don't think there's a lot of targets to go around outside of Jamar Chase already. Then you hear noise that Mike Gesicki is showing up really, really well in camp. So that's some targets that are going to go to the big slot. You already saw tight ends in Cincinnati doing well. T. Higgins is back, so he's going to get a ton of targets as well. Then it's just going to be consolidated, like we've seen from Cincinnati. Trent Irwin, Andre Yosis. There was another Trenton even. There were 2 Trentons on the Bengals last year that were doing well. There's not a lot of volume to go outside of the big 3, really. It's going to be Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and then probably Mike Gesicki, being honest with you, and then maybe Chase Brown, and then this is where the argument comes in, and that's why I'm just betting on the athletic Andre Yosis going into year 2, who's already made some noise as a rookie, already has his connection with Joe Burrow. I talk about Chase Brown catching some targets. Well, Zach Moss is looking to be his David Montgomery. There's not been a lot of talk about Zach Moss, at least from camp. Of course, there's been a lot of hype bubbling up around Zach Moss all offseason because of what we saw from him in Indianapolis last year. But now we're actually starting to hear some camp hype as well. Running back Zach Moss doesn't mess around when he gets the football. Whether it's a run or catch, he's looking to square his shoulders and sprint upfield. Zach Taylor said, I really like Zach Moss. He's professional, detailed. I really am a fan. So again, it's going to be Chase Brown. That's the one I think is going to get the majority, at least in like your, the one with the upside. But it is looking like Zach Moss is going to give you a decent floor. And for where he's going in drafts, there's definitely some worst picks you can make. But as long as he's going ahead of Chase Brown, I'm not going to be drafting Zach Moss. Like, I don't think it's the end of the world. Like, I don't think he'll burn you just because, end of the 8th round, early 9th. It's not that bad. But there's just not much upside there. Like, it's going to have to come down to rushing touchdowns at the end of the day. So unless it's a standard league, there's probably not much reason to do it, especially with Chase Brown going 2 rounds later at the end of the 10th, early 11th. The guy with actual athleticism and actual production from the Cincinnati Bengals last year. Again, they don't move on from Joe Mixon if they don't feel comfortable with someone in the room. It was obviously Chase Brown as Chris Evans, and the other guy just never even really saw the field last year. That was Travion Henderson, right? So that's where I'm at there. I want Chase Brown over Zach Moss, especially with the value discrepancy. But if Zach Moss loses a couple rounds, I think you could take him. And even now, you can take him. I don't necessarily recommend it, but I don't think it's going to be a roster sinking pick at the end of the day. We still saw, 794 rush yards and 7 touchdowns from him. And, most of that came over just a few game stretch early in the season. I mean, 20 points, 22 points, 9 points, 33 points, 18 points, his first 5 starts last year. So obviously he has a little bit of juice. I just do believe that Chase Brown being the guy in the red zone, probably being the guy catching all of the passes out of the backfield as well, is the one you want, especially in half PPR, full PPR fantasy leagues. But in standard, and you just want like someone to add some depth to your running back room, Zach Moss is going to be a guy with a decent enough floor. Which leads us to the Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers right now are having a lot of hype boil up over the wide receiver room. And I'm just going to play a little bit of a highlight here. I like this a lot. We're hearing some drum beats really for Adam Thielen. Check out this nice little play from Bryce Young. In there really well. A good route from Adam Thielen as well. But just a nice little back corner kind of throw from Bryce Young, brought in by Adam Thielen. That isn't the only Adam Thielen hype from the day either. It's Adam Thielen's day in Uptown. He's already made a trip of impressive catches in individuals and 7-on-7 drills. So Adam Thielen looking like he still has some gas left in the tank, which is probably what we should have expected anyway. I mean, he was really, really good last year, was able to soak up a ton of volume and do well with it. Now, of course, he's not going to have as much volume this year. Deontay Johnson, very similar type of wide receiver. And it is looking like Jonathan Mingo is even lighting it up at camp still. We've been hearing reports that he is the standout wide receiver so far and looks like a completely different wide receiver. Jonathan Mingo barely resembles the guy who looked unsure in his routes and in general during an underwhelming rookie season. Mingo is running crisp patterns, getting open and grabbing everyone's attention, most notably Bryce Young. Some other reports are coming out that suggest Mingo is doing so well that he's actually holding Xavier Legette back on the depth chart, which I honestly expected anyway. Like I said, Xavier Legette did not really excite me at all at the Senior Bowl. So I didn't really expect him to be able to develop quickly and earn a pretty high roster spot, especially since Jonathan Mingo was at least running routes and getting volume last year. He just wasn't able to do much with it, whether that be, the pocket breaking down and passes be underthrown, overthrown, just bad passes in general, or the fact he was pretty damn bad last year. But still, he has, very high draft capital, really good athleticism, and sometimes it just takes some time for some players to develop. With him not going up against top corners, I do expect Jonathan Mingo to do a lot better. So the way I'm kind of looking at it right now is Deontay Johnson's the wide receiver 1 based on what we're hearing. And then Jonathan Mingo might be like the wide receiver 2 on like a just like being the outside wide receiver type deal. But I believe that Adam Thielen, based on what we're seeing and hearing, will continue to probably get like the second most targets, but of course be like the slot guy. So that's kind of where I'm at, is those are going to be the big 3, with Xavier Legette getting worked in as the season goes along. And then if an injury happens, then he'll be productive. But I would much rather take a swing on Jonathan Mingo in my underdog drafts right now than Xavier Legette, given ADPs. In Dynasty, you probably still want Legette over him, given, the draft capital and everything. But, in redraft, I think it's going to take some time for him. Again, not very impressive at the Senior Bowl, has some issues with separation. And really everything. Route running was not very crisp. Catching was not very crisp. He doesn't look as big as he like is, right? Like he's like supposed to be like 6'3", 220 pounds or something. He doesn't look that. He looks more like 6'1", 200 pounds. So anyway, it's going to take some time for him, in my opinion, and I'm staying away in redraft. The Atlanta Falcons. Kyle Pitts had some good battles today. Pitts won all 3 times, including a slant where he created a lot of space, and Michael Penix Jr. delivered a good ball. Pitts looks really good in his first session of 11s. I'll continue with Kyle Pitts stuff, actually. Between noticeable rhythm with quarterback Kirk Cousins and a greater target emphasis from Cousins and offensive coordinator Zach Robinson, Pitts is trending in the right direction. And his teammates are noticing too. Here's a nice little clip. Nice little clip here. Going to the outside. Thrown well. I mean, that's just what you want to see. There's a lot of those. I mean, it seems that almost every NFL team was doing that same drill yesterday, really. It's like every highlight is someone catching a touchdown in the back corner of the end zone. But still, very cool. Very, very cool to hear that Kyle Pitts is becoming a huge focus of the offense. That's what we've expected anyway. I mean, when you have a guy that is as tall, as fast, as strong, and as productive and good as Kyle Pitts, you have to feature him. You have to make him a huge part of the game plan. That was kind of the big reason that this new coaching staff was brought in, is the offensive weapons were not utilized properly under Arthur Smith. Now it is seeming that they are. And again, I say, do not be surprised when Kyle Pitts outproduces and out-targets Drake London this season. He's taller, he's faster, he's heavier, he has more production under his belt, right? Like, it is everything you want from a prospect in Kyle Pitts. He's a better route runner than Drake London as well, a better separator, better hands even. Probably not better hands. I'll give Drake London better hands. But still, Kyle Pitts, an absolute stud, and I'm very, very excited for his breakout this season. He's going to have 1,000 yards again. He's going to get in the touchdown department. It's going to be huge. We saw what TJ Hawkinson did with Kirk Cousins. Kyle Pitts is a better TJ Hawkinson. In fact, Kyle Pitts is probably closer to Justin Jefferson than he is TJ Hawkinson, really, at the end of the day. So I'm just very, very excited to see what type of usage we get from him. I'm expecting huge things. I have a 60% exposure to Kyle Pitts on Underdog right now. I checked it yesterday. Just insane. And I'm going to get those numbers up. I want all the Kyle Pitts I can get. I've said time and time again, I am trading Trey McBride. I'm trading Dalton Kincaid. I'm trading Brock Bowers. I'm trading all of those tight ends for Kyle Pitts and seeing what cherry I can get on top, because I am expecting huge things from him in his career. 23 years old, already 2,000 career receiving yards, 1,000-yard rookie season, and he's done all that being less than 100% the last 2 seasons. And I say he's 23 because he's younger than Dalton Kincaid. He's younger than Trey McBride. In fact, he's only a couple months older than Sam Laporta. Kyle Pitts is being slept on to an unbelievable degree. Get that dude everywhere you can. And join me with 60% exposure on Underdog. There's also some news on the running back room. The offense seemed more committed to the running game, led by Bijan Robinson, 7 carries, and Tyler Algier's 4 with the first team. Zach Robinson said certainly Tyler Algier is going to have a big role, and at certain points in the season, we're going to be leaning on him. I don't want to read too much into this in terms of, like, I see a lot of people seeing this quote and being like, okay, that means the Falcons really want to utilize Tyler Algier, similar to how, Arthur Smith did, to where he's the RB1 and Bijan Robinson is the third down back and, more of a change of pace. That's not the case here. Bijan Robinson still got more carries than Tyler Algier in practice. Bijan Robinson still being utilized a lot more as a receiving back in practices. What this suggests to me is that they just want someone to spell Bijan Robinson every once in a while. And then to another degree, when they say that we're going to rely on him at certain points in the season, I'm assuming that means, when we're up in the fourth quarter and we want to run out the clock, we're going to use Algier over Bijan Robinson, which just makes total sense. So, I think it's fine. I really do. I am not going to, panic at all with Bijan Robinson shares, thinking that Tyler Algier is going to take a significant amount of work away from him. That's just not going to happen. I know Tyler Algier has been productive, but he's more so going to be a guy who comes in, probably not even like David Montgomery to Jahmyr Gibbs, probably even less than that, to be completely honest with you. And that's still going to be fine. Like, this is a player you want, especially at his ADP. If anything happens to Bijan Robinson, he's going to be a total stud. But it's going to be hard to ever reliably start him unless it's like a terrible game. Like, they're going up against a team that hasn't scored any points and, they're going to be able to run it out. Then you can probably go with Tyler Algier. But I really can't wrap my head around this staff saying, oh, we want to give Bijan Robinson a Christian McCaffrey workload, and then coming back and saying that Tyler Algier is going to have a big role and be relied on at certain points in the season. I think those certain points are in the season are when they're winning and they want to run out the clock. That's more so where I'm at. Or they just want to have a run-heavy game plan in general where him and Bijan Robinson will be carrying the load. And that's fine. That's not a big deal. That's just how backfields work. What I wanted to highlight, though, is on the second team, rookie running back Jace McClellan is leading the way with 6 carries. Carlos Washington Jr. is next with 5, and then Avery Williams is behind them with 3 carries. Avery Williams is recovering from an injury, so it makes sense why he wouldn't get a ton of usage, but also it's a new staff, so they're probably not tied to him anyway. So I think Jace McClellan is someone to keep our eye on. Just because, you do need someone. I think that this is a rare backfield, at least in Dynasty, where it's worth having a third running back. Like, it's not necessarily a handcuff, I guess, but more so just, an contingent upside player to put on your bench. And Jace McClellan comes out of Alabama. He's 5'10", he's 220 pounds, and he runs a sub 4.540, at least expected. He didn't do the combine this year, but, in high school, he ran a 4.57, so I think we can bring that down. And, a really, really good high school recruit is really all we could see on Player Profiler. But at Alabama, he has had, over the last 2 seasons, 1,500 rush yards, 18 touchdowns, and 300 receiving yards. Not the best, but, still, obviously, if you play for Alabama, you're probably good. So Jace McClellan, I think in your deeper leagues, worth rostering in case anything happens to Algier or Bijan Robinson. Again, one of the rare backfields where, a third running back is probably worth rostering just in case. And Jace McClellan, the rookie, seeming to be the guy right now. So keep your eye on him. He's leading the second team running backs in carries and work. So cool. Cool. Jace McClellan. We'll move on now to the Steelers. And as mentioned, all I said I was going to do when it comes to the Steelers was keep my eye on what happens with Russell Wilson's return. And yesterday, Russell Wilson did return to practice. And, well, him and Justin Fields are splitting the first team reps now, as expected, guys. I mean, come on. Come on. There is no way. I still can't believe how much shit I got for not believing in Russell Wilson this offseason. Like, I haven't believed in Russell Wilson for a single second. I just haven't. It has been Justin Fields, Justin Fields, Justin Fields, Justin Fields. Because when you look at a franchise trying to figure out the quarterback, they're going to go with the young athletic quarterback with massive upside that's going to sell tickets, that's going to sell jerseys, right? And Russell Wilson missing some time, all it did was, make this happen faster. No Russell Wilson in 7 shots. And Justin Fields looks the best he has all camp, capping it off with a designed run to score. Offense wins 4-3. He faked the handoff to Warren, then ran in on the right. Fields' first team unit scored on 4 out of 5 attempts. Keep an eye out for crowd film highlights of George Pickens' one-handed grab. You want to see that one-handed grab? Why don't we check that out? Who doesn't love a George Pickens highlight in camp season? Yes. I mean, just, George Pickens doing George Pickens things. But again, Justin Fields is with the first team now, ladies and gentlemen. We have to take that seriously. It's way too quiet. I feel like I'm the only one talking about this. Like, I don't see anything going on. It's everyone is still just like, oh, Russell Wilson is the starter. Sure, maybe week 1. It's not going to take long. Even then, it's really looking like Justin Fields is pushing it for week 1, and he's just going to be the starter. If he's performing this well at camp, he's going to perform this well at preseason. And there is nothing the Steelers front office or organization can do to stop it. There's just nothing. When a player is this fun to watch and this electric, you can't bench them. That's been the argument the whole offseason. You just can't do it. And if you do it, you've still got to pull the plug on Russell Wilson at some point because he doesn't have it anymore. He doesn't have it anymore. Russell Wilson was not going to be your long-term option, regardless of if he even had it still. It was always going to be a 1-year rental because we knew damn sure the Pittsburgh Steelers weren't going to invest in Russell Wilson. The only reason they brought him in was because they could sign him for $1 million. That was the only reason. And the fact that no other teams wanted Russell Wilson for the vet minimum should have been the screamingest indictment of all. Okay? And I know that Justin Fields, you could say the same thing. Like, oh, teams didn't want to trade a lot for him. Because the Bears ruined him. They just ruined him. They ruined him. Terrible coaching staff, terrible offensive line. And in the year that he finally had a weapon in DJ Moore, he actually did improve. He had the career best passing yards despite only playing in 13 games. He had a career high completion percentage. He was top 10 in deep ball accuracy. He was top 15 in under pressure accuracy. Justin Fields took some steps forward. Now he's going to a team that actually knows how to utilize quarterbacks. Again, Arthur Smith, Ryan Tannehill, Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, those guys at least scored fantasy points. Ryan Tannehill in particular kind of turned his career around. We saw Mason Rudolph doing well in this offense last year. It's a really good offensive line. George Pickens is awesome. Get Justin Fields while you still can. Again, I know, like, I get all the concerns about him. I get it. But this is a new team, and people only care about excitement when you're an NFL fan. At the end of the day, they don't want to watch Russell Wilson. I don't know a single Steelers fan that is excited to watch Russell Wilson this year. They are all waiting for Justin Fields to take over. Every single one. It's going to take some time for some players, especially ones like Justin Fields who, run before passing. But we saw some improvements last year. He has a really good coaching staff now, an actual offensive-minded coaching staff. And he's not having a cycle of offensive coordinators like he dealt with in Chicago. So I just got to get excited about it. We have to get excited about it because once he actually starts, and everyone, am I crazy to say that Justin Fields will score 40 points in his first game? No, I'm not crazy to say that because that's just what Justin Fields does. Regardless of how many times he turns the ball over or whatever, he's still going to run for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns and probably pass for 1 or 2 as well. Like, the dude is just electric when it comes to fantasy football. And the fact that we as a fantasy football community are fading him makes no sense to me. Because, like, all of us can come around like, oh, yeah, sure, we'll draft TJ Hawkinson. I'm doing it, of course. I don't care if players miss part of the season. If they come back and are high levels, especially towards the end of the season, that's all that matters. And that has been, kind of the bear case of Justin Fields, if you will, is, he only will play the second half of the season. only play the second half of the season when points matter the most for your fantasy football teams. That's what you want. That's what you want. Justin Fields is going to win championships this year, at least if he stays healthy. It's going to be awesome. Get Justin Fields while you still can. Now, interestingly enough, Russell Wilson, Roman Wilson. What's going on here? There's 2 R. Wilsons in Pittsburgh. All offseason, we hear nothing about Roman Wilson. Then Russell Wilson gets hurt, and Roman Wilson and Justin Fields have a great connection. We're starting to hear hype of Roman Wilson at camp. That only 1 R. Wilson can be out there. Then Russell Wilson comes back, and Roman Wilson gets hurt. Like, what's going on? It's why can there only be 1 R. Wilson in Pittsburgh? I don't get it. But either way, unfortunate for Roman Wilson. He got carted away yesterday after being injured on a jet sweep. The cart is customary for camp injuries because of the distance from the practice field to the medical facilities. So don't read into it too much in that regard. However, it does appear to be at least a more than mild injury. It doesn't seem to be a major injury, but it is an ankle injury, and they have classified him as week to week, and that he should be okay. They have said it's not a high ankle sprain, which is good enough news. The only thing that sucks here is that we do know Mike Tomlin is a little bit old school, and he wants his rookies to get as many reps as possible. If Roman Wilson, really any time that Roman Wilson misses is going to hinder his production and the ability to be able to produce early in the NFL. Could he still break out towards the end of the year? Maybe, but it's going to it really just depends on when he can get back. If he plays in the preseason, I think he'll be fine. But if he ends up missing, half the preseason, all the preseason, I think we should fade him for redraft, which sucks is we can't really say that for certain right now. For now, I would just, honestly, if you've drafted him up to this point enough, like you should have, because he's an awesome player, then just hold off. If you haven't, if you still want to get your exposure up, go ahead. But I would wait till we hear more about this injury before trying to either trade for Roman Wilson or draft Roman Wilson, unless you don't have much exposure. Then definitely go get some. I do recommend that. But, I would like to see the true severity of this. I think if he misses some, like I said, if he misses half to all the preseason, then he's probably not going to be able to do much as a rookie, because then we're going to be talking about him trying to heal for the first few weeks of the season. Then he's just going to try to get up to game speed once he's 100%. And then we're already talking about an offense that halfway through the year is probably firing on all cylinders with Pat Freiermuth and George Pickens and whoever they bring in, because, the Steelers have been a team tied to wide receiver trades and the free agency market in general. So if this ends up being a serious injury, they could bring someone in as well, which is just not good for Roman Wilson's prospects. So this is a good opportunity to get more into the Van Jefferson sweepstakes. As we know, he's kind of taken over Calvin Austin's role as the deep shot wide receiver. But we also know from his time in Los Angeles that he is more than just a deep shot wide receiver. That's, of course, what he excels at. That's what he's best at. But he's a decent route runner as well. So he's probably going to end up being the wide receiver too if Roman Wilson misses any time. So I guess maybe get in on the Van Jefferson sweepstakes. Can't believe I'm saying that. But that's kind of my big takeaway from this. And then, of course, just kind of wait to see what happens in terms of the severity on that injury. I do agree that Fields is a better fantasy quarterback than an actual quarterback, but that's all we care about. We only care about fantasy points here. That's all I care about. He will start, though. He will definitely start because Russell Wilson is dust. We'll now move to the Washington Commanders. And I saw a million different tweets about Jahan Dotson yesterday. It was apparently the Jahan Dotson day. And this is what was said. Jahan Dotson's productive day. Several fingers are required to count his receptions. He started with a sure-handed catch as Daniels ripped a pass into a tight window while rolling right. And they connected soon after, with Dotson dropping to his knees to snag an intended low pass in traffic. Again, Washington Commanders Twitter yesterday was just Jahan Dotson, 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 which is cool. It's really good news. We know that Jahan Dotson and Jaden Daniels actually had it was like a training camp or something that they worked together in college, which is awesome. They already have a little bit of a connection together. Jaden Daniels also, there are tons of reports coming out that he is just crushing it at camp. Jahan Dotson said, "Me and Terry were talking about it on the sidelines. He puts the ball in places that makes our jobs easier, putting it where only you can get it. He's a special talent." I mean, of course you're going to be a special talent. He just won the Heisman, was just the second overall pick, but it's just good to hear some confirmation bias from his wide receivers. Get Jaden Daniels again. If you have Caleb Williams, trade him for Jaden Daniels plus. I don't know why there's that much of a discrepancy there, especially since it's fantasy, and Jaden Daniels has the rushing upside. But still, either way, looking good, very exciting, and just makes me want some of these Commanders pass catchers. And Jahan Dotson, of course. I mean, he is cheap right now. You can get him super late in drafts. And, I mean, he's going to be the wide receiver, too. And, I mean, Terry McLaurin being up there in age, I mean, maybe he becomes a wide receiver 1 at some point as well. Good stuff coming out of Washington. Really, everyone. I mean, we're hearing reports that Brian Robinson's looking good as more than just a runner, but also a pass catcher. Austin Eckler's looking spry. Terry McLaurin's looked good. And now we're hearing Jahan Dotson looks good as well. Good news coming from Washington. Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, so far through team periods, is 16 of 17 with 1 drop. 16 of those passes were completed in a row. He seems nice to me today, and he just threw 2 touchdowns back-to-back. So I just wanted to mention that, as 16 passes completed in a row is pretty remarkable, but also the fact that the Jags camp has been pretty bad, to say the least. We know the first week, all we heard was terrible stuff. Now we're hearing, starting yesterday, that things are starting to light up. Again, a lot of it's coming from Brian Thomas Jr. He's starting to kind of get comfortable, and that's leading to some, just some deep shots and highlight type plays that gets people excited this time of year. But it seems that Trevor Lawrence has grown comfortable as well, which is good news, as he was being faded a lot last week. I did say to pump the brakes, because, this is training camp. You work through the kinks. Seems that they've worked through the kinks and that the offense is getting good, which is awesome. So again, I say, get some T-Law. Good value right now. Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals right now are having some fun stuff go on as well. Of course, everyone has some fun stuff going on right now. But interestingly enough, the RB2 battle is changing a little bit in the wrong direction as of right now. For those thinking the RB2 battle was firmly between Michael Carter and Trey Benson, Emari Demercado has something to say. Demercado has been a common occurrence, subbing in for James Conner during first-team work. His pass protecting ability has been on display early on. Yikes. I'm not going to lie, I have a lot of Trey Benson, so I'm not happy about this one at all, to be honest. We'll see. Again, it is early in camp, so sometimes it takes some time for some rookies to get meaningful snaps, especially pass protection snaps. Like, that's more than likely going to go to a vet and a big-bodied running back like a Demercado is. So for now, I'm not going to get too worried, but I am getting slightly worried, as I have a lot of Trey Benson, and I would like to hear that he's already getting RB1 snaps. For example, Will Shipley is getting RB1 snaps. Dylan Lobb is getting RB1 snaps. Jawar Jordan, we talked about yesterday, is getting first-team snaps. The fact that Trey Benson is losing snaps to Emari Demercado right now is not good news, to say the least. But hopefully it develops in the right direction. We do know that Trey Benson is a much better runner than Michael Carter and Emari Demercado. It seems that a lot of this is pass pro. So hopefully he can work on that. If anything, I would just say if Trey Benson becomes available as a result of this news, trade for him. As again, kind of the big thing for Trey Benson anyway was a 2025 play, or an injury to James Conner. And so, we can't get too upset yet. It seems he was more of a contingency plan for James Conner than anything else. You should still be trying to acquire him in Dynasty. But it is just not good news to hear he's ceding snaps to Emari Demercado right now. So we can move on now to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are, still doing well. Lots of reports of designed runs for Jalen Hurts, in case you were wondering. That we hadn't really heard much of that. In fact, if anything, we had been hearing the opposite, that Jalen Hurts was actually more of a passer, had, double the amount of completions this time than he did last year. But, we're also hearing that they're doing a lot of designed runs with him as well, finally working those into the game plan, which, we kind of knew was going to happen anyway, but it's just good to hear the confirmation that it is going to happen and that Jalen Hurts will still be able to be Jalen Hurts. Definitely still worth drafting at his ADP. He's just a stud with really good weapons. And Devontae Smith, again, we talked about it yesterday, he's working in the slot. Apparently, he is a true slot machine. We are hearing reports that this is the best he's ever looked in camp. In fact, one beat writer even wrote that he looks like the best player on the Eagles. I can't get enough of that. If you go to my stat page on PlayerProfiler, he's one of my guys. I love myself some Slim Reaper. If he really is going to be the slot receiver, it is interesting, because you need another outside wide receiver. But either way, that's going to lead to a ton of targets. It's just going to lead to a ton of targets. And he's just an awesome receiver already. If he's going to be able to average over 8 targets a game on this offense, that is a screaming buy, especially right now, third, fourth round for him. Slim Reaper looking good. Will Shipley is still getting first-team touches on offense, and apparently has looked really good yesterday. Again, that comes with Saquon Barkley missing due to personal reasons. So again, Will Shipley, a really nice handcuff plus to roster right now in our fantasy leagues. You've got to get some Will Shipley in redraft because it's looking like he's going to have some snaps even while Saquon Barkley is healthy. But if anything happens to Saquon Barkley, Will Shipley literally has 30 touch a game upside. That's how much they want to use Saquon, and they clearly brought in Will Shipley to have a very similar type of player, someone who can catch a ton of passes and be explosive. So keep your eye on him, faux show. And then Johnny Wilson getting some more red zone hype. They're still really only working him in with the first team in the red zone, which is all they really should do, given he's 6'7", but apparently caught 3 touchdowns yesterday, which is good news for Johnny Wilson truthers, I guess. Again, he looked awful to me at the Senior Bowl, so I have been fading him. I just have. He looked awful. Really, really goofy. Like, he looks exactly how you would imagine a 6'7" person to run. Literally ran like Goofy from Mickey Mouse. Like, it looked bad. And he was not smooth, had some drops as well. But he's catching at camp. He's working in the red zone at camp. And if he's going to catch touchdown passes, it's probably worth rostering him. However, I do just want to pump the brakes a little bit, it kind of like Darnell Washington, a lot of that same stuff last year. Where it's like, okay, he's working in red zone. And then, of course, he's never really actually targeted in the red zone. And that's the same thing. I went to UGA Pro Day last year, and I was like, Darnell Washington's not really he's not deserving of all this hype right now. So I'm feeling a lot of those same vibes here. I didn't like the eye test when I saw Johnny Wilson in person. So I'm not going to get too excited about him catching some passes in the red zone at camp. That's what he does. He's 6'7". But I think if he was actually in game speed, it's going to be a lot more difficult. And then, of course, right, they're there's so many other people that are probably ahead of him in the pecking order in the red zone. Dallas Goedert, Jalen Hurts himself, Saquon Barkley, maybe Will Shipley, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown. I think all of those guys are still ahead of Johnny Wilson, even if he is 6'7". So if anything, he's a random DFS dart throw because he's probably going to cost $800. That's where I'm throwing Johnny Wilson. He's a DFS play. New York Giants. Yes, Bach, I actually do have an 11 o'clock meeting today, but I think Johnny Tuma, I think you're probably watching. So, just bear with me. We're almost done. Giants, New York Giants, staying within the East. Not surprising to hear the Giants had their worst offensive day with Malik Neighbors barely taking reps due to rest. He is the offense for now. I trust Brian Dable to scheme plays open, but ultimately this offense is going to revolve around Neighbors drawing defenders or making plays. Connor Hughes tweets out, Daniel Jones is 3 of 7 through first 3 sets of team drills, a couple bad underthrows, and one behind Slayton on a short route to the outside. It's been pretty ugly. We'll see if he can get it going before practice ends. Then Connor Hughes tweets out, Drew Lock should get first team reps at Giants training camp if Daniel Jones keeps struggling. 32 beat writers then quotes his article as it's behind a paywall. It's been a relatively common occurrence through the Giants' first 5 on-field camp practices to see receivers running open behind the secondary. The protection is also offering the quarterback time to find open receivers and take advantage. This usually leads to highlight-filled practices, generating enormous hype for the coming year. For the Giants, though, it's an equally common occurrence to see Jones simply missing his wide-open guys. So it should not be a surprise to us, really, that Daniel Jones was looking electric without pads. And then now that the pads are on and the speed is full, he's missing throws left and right and not looking good. And now Giants fans and reporters are calling for Drew Lock to get first team reps. That was very quick, very fast. That's why I've been saying to stash Drew Lock. They brought him in for a reason. And as we see from Hard Knocks, the Giants are not sold on Daniel Jones. So why should we? We saw a good year from him. He earned the contract. And then he backed that up with some of the worst quarterback play we've seen in the history of this league. He looked awful last year prior to injury. He had one good game. I'll give him that. But in the other ones, he looked terrible. And for me, it's easy that suggests that, his year was, all on tape. And the defenses were able to figure him out pretty easily. And without Saquon Barkley, he's not going to have that safety net even anymore. I know Malik Neighbors can be argued a safety net, but he's not right next to him like a Saquon Barkley is. So I think that Drew Lock is the plan here, at least towards the end of the season. As we talked about on the show a few times over the offseason, as Anand Nanduri has talked about on the decision point, Daniel Jones has an injury guarantee into his contract. If he cannot pass a physical, he is fully guaranteed his 2025 salary. And the Giants do not want to do that. The Giants do not want to do that. We saw what happened with Russell Wilson, very similar situation in Denver, where they just decided to cut ties and actually just bench him, even though he was actually doing okay, because they don't want to risk the injury guarantee, and they decided they're ready to move on. The Giants have already decided they're ready to move on. We know that they're going to draft a quarterback next year, or they're going to bring in a vet, or Drew Lock is going to turn some heads, right? But either way, I think that they brought in Drew Lock because they want to have a backup plan for Daniel Jones, but also they want to test a pocket passer in this offense as well, as they now have Malik Neighbors, as they're upgrading this offensive line, as they've lost Saquon Barkley and Darren Waller. They just want to, they have to figure out their identity. They have to figure out the best step forward, and that comes with trying out different quarterbacks. They know that this is a lost season. They know it. And so I can't really get behind Daniel Jones, even at his value. I understand he's crazy cheap, but so I guess you can take him, but just know you should probably also have Drew Lock. And that's just where I'm at. I can't buy into Daniel Jones. I was buying into him prior to the draft. I'm not going to lie, because I didn't think the Giants were going to be able to draft a quarterback this year. But once they finally did that and everyone else went on board to buying Daniel Jones, that's when I decided to switch. Because when everyone's buying, that really means it's time to sell. If you think about it, at the end of the day, that means his market's gone up. It's time to move on. You can cash in on Daniel Jones right now, and just get Malik Neighbors if you want, or just stay away. Just stay away. Like, do you really want a part of this offense? Do you really want a part of this New York Giants offense? The answer, no. So anyway, that's the Giants. We can move on to the Arizona Cardinals now. The Arizona Cardinals, one name I wouldn't sleep on offensively would be Michael Wilson, who already looks like a seasoned pro coming off a promising rookie season, reminding some on staff who once coached in Minnesota a little bit of Adam Thielen, and that he's big, smart, and consistent. We already knew he's big, smart, and consistent. We saw it last year. He was actually, performed pretty well. What was it, 600 yards, 700 yards for him? Or was it just 500? Either way, I'm going to pull up the actual amount. But I remember he had some big weeks. I also remember him just being consistent enough. 565 yards and 3 touchdowns. And that was, of course, with some pretty poor quarterback play and a less than 100% Kyler Murray when he returned. I do think we should expect some bigger strides from him in year 2. Marvin Harrison Jr. taking away that number 1 corner. Trey McBride kind of opening up the middle of the field. There's some opportunity. Greg Dortch kind of doing the same, taking some stuff over the slot. Michael Wilson's going to have some, he's going to have a pretty good floor. I think this is a guy who's probably going to get 5 to 6 targets a game, 50 to 70 yards a game. And he's going to have some touchdowns sprinkled in here or there, which is a player you want, especially in the range he's going in drafts right now. I mean, I believe you can get him in the 18th round sometimes, but for the most part, 15th round. He's gone up a lot, actually, a lot since July. In the last week, he's risen 5 ADP slots just in the last week. Over the 14 days, he's also been a consistent riser. Over the last month, he's just been consistently rising. But either way, good to hear the camp hype. You love it. You love to hear it. Good rookie season, Stanford. And, him and Kyler Murray, they're connecting. The Jets. We're seeing more plays from Malachi Corley now that Adam Rodgers is with the team. That is significant, says Nick Faria. Corley is making the most of his reps. He has an awesome one-handed catch and played a role on underneath routes. Excited to see his development. Very good news. Very good news. He was, of course, injured, so he took some time to get on the field. Now that he's back, he's making some noise. This is exactly what you want to hear from a rookie. And the fact he's already connecting with Aaron Rodgers is also what you want to hear. We know we had the pool house narrative, and now we're having him already working with one team, already catching some one-handed snags, already working in underneath routes. It seems that the Jets really do want to utilize him, and he's going to have a pretty decent rookie season, at least relative to his value. I still don't know if there's going to be a ton of opportunity for him, but if he can even have a smidgen of efficiency, he should be decent enough, at the very least worth drafting in best ball, and definitely going to be worth throwing in some of our DFS lineups over the season. New England Patriots. It is really sad for Drake May right now. As we talked about, Drake May was awesome before the pads came on. In fact, it even got so far to the point where Gerard Mayo said it was an open competition and he didn't know if Jacoby Brissett was going to be the week 1 starter anymore. Now that the pads are on, now it's full speed. Now the defense is actually trying. Drake May is struggling very, very bad. This is Chad Graff's takeaway from practice number 7. Drake May went 5 of 11 in full team reps. Jacoby Brissett, Evan Lazar says, Jacoby Brissett continued to look the more in-command quarterback today, but it wasn't a great day for the Patriots offense. Besides pretty completions to Hunter Henry and KJ Osborne by Brissett, the coverage was tight, but the offensive line has improved. Greg Bedard, another tough day for Drake May. 3 of 9 with a sack, a reshuffle, snap exchange, fumble in team. Really, really scuffled in main team period. Finished 1 of 6 with a fumble. And thinking a lot, not being helped with Mafi as a center. Every shotgun snap is an adventure. Okay, so it seems like he's getting some bad snaps leading to his fumbles. But still, not looking good. Jacoby Brissett is really, really taking the reins and ready to be starter for week 1. Again, I will say, I do think the Patriots will pull the plug. You know, this is a lost season. Unless Jacoby Brissett is actually winning games, they will go to Drake May at some point just to get some ticket sales, just to sell some jerseys, and just to get Drake May some game reps. They do want to do that at some point this season. I think we can all agree. Even if he doesn't improve throughout camp or preseason, they're still going to throw him out there at some point, whether it be week 8, whether it be week 4, whether it be week 12. We're going to see Drake May. And so I do want to say buy him in Dynasty before he's announced the starter. He has a lot of those intangibles. And when it comes to his ceiling, he has one of the highest in the league. I mean, he really, really does have a lot of athleticism to display if given the chance. So buy Drake May in Dynasty. Maybe hold off in redraft, but probably still buy him in redraft as well, at least in Superflex leagues, because he's, a decent enough value. And I do think he has the arm and the intangibles to at least get some fantasy points for us, even if he doesn't pull out any wins. The Patriots don't worry about wins this year. They just want to give him some reps. Some other news from Patriots camp. Tyquan Thornton is having a good camp. Just want to mention that, as I do, of course, like role players. He's going to be a best ball player worth drafting and a DFS player. He's got the deep threat. That's his role. He's going to do it, and he's really fast. So he's going to be good at it, especially when Drake May is out there with his cannon for an arm. Ramondre Stevenson said that he is falling in love with Alex Van Pelt's outside zone run scheme. He said that it is his favorite kind of offense to play in because that's what he ran in college and already feels very comfortable. So that's pretty good news. We were kind of worried about what this new offensive shift would look like for Ramondre Stevenson, especially since historically the slower running backs don't really do well in outside zone run schemes. He feels comfortable in it. He feels good in it. So I think we should as well. We already know that the Patriots gave a vote of confidence in his extension. So it's probably Ramondre Stevens' season, which is great news. Pretty decent value, all-purpose back. And he's going to catch a ton of passes in garbage time more than likely. And lastly, Jalen Polk is turning into Mr. Reliable in the red zone. He has 2 touchdowns and went 3-1 versus the corners and one-on-one drills. He has been steady and consistent every day. And then Mike Kadlick tweets out that Jalen Polk has been without question the Patriots' best receiver through 6 training camp practices. Great news. Great news. Dallas Cowboys got to put on the tears for a second. Mike McCarthy said all 3 Jalen. So now Jalen Tolbert and Jalen Brooks, we've already talked about, have looked good. Now Jalen Cropper has been impressive as well, per Mike McCarthy. So Ryan Flournoy, you need to get healthy soon. Get healthy soon. They've said your day-to-day. Please return this week or next. I'm tired of hearing about the Jalens. I want some Ryan news on my timeline. Denver Broncos. Javonte Williams continues to look incredible per beat reporters, and Audric Estime looks like the clear running back 2. So that's what you're looking for. Javonte and Estime. Those are the 2 you want. And currently, Jarrett Stidham is the most consistent quarterback. That's probably to be expected because Zach Wilson is terrible and Bo Nix is a rookie. Bo Nix is still going to start week 1. He still is. But it's looking like Jarrett Stidham might beat out Zach Wilson for the backup spot, which is just hilarious. It's just hilarious. But still, don't fade Bo Nix. Again, still buy him. He will be announced the starter. It just takes some time for some rookies. He might not even have a great rookie season. But that, again, the Broncos aren't trying to win this year. They just want to get comfortable. They want to find their identity, and they want to work Bo Nix up to game speed. Minnesota Vikings. This is interesting. This is very interesting. As all we've heard is that, Sam Darnold looks good. Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell talked today about Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy's performance thus far in training camp. He said a lot, some highs, some lows, and then went on to say that JJ McCarthy will take first team reps at some point and capped it by saying much to be overanalyzed, but a lot of work to be done. So it seems that he's not totally sold on either quarterback right now, despite Sam Darnold looking all right. And the fact that he's giving first team reps to JJ McCarthy, not yet, at some point he will, I think does kind of show that, again, Sam Darnold is not expected to play this whole season. They do want JJ McCarthy to go out there, and they probably want it to happen sooner rather than later. Again, the Vikings have a week 6 bye after a European game. So I think that is a perfect opportunity to pull the plug on Darnold and throw JJ McCarthy when they get back. So that is, again, where I'm kind of looking at. I think we'll get Sam Darnold. As we've seen before, he looks good in short stretches and then just completely collapses. I think that's exactly what we should expect here in Minnesota. He's got the weapons and the coaching staff to look good, but at the end of the day, he is not their long-term option, and he's going to turn back into a pumpkin sooner rather than later. Saints. The enthusiasm surrounding Taysom Hill this offseason, from everyone to Rhea to Clint Kubiak and the new offensive coaching staff to Hill himself, has been notable all offseason. Really intrigued to see if his role can actually grow to new heights with the Saints this year. The great thing to point out here with Taysom Hill is he is not actually getting many passing reps. They are truly trying to use him out of the backfield, on special teams, and as a receiving tight end. That is pretty cool. Pretty good news for everyone that drafted him in Scott Fishbowl, everyone that has him in a tight end and sleeper, looking like he really actually will be a focal point of this offense, even with the new offensive staff. Chargers. In the early stages of training camp, DJ Chark has made several eyebrow-raising plays, including a few catches deep down the field. Great news. What we should have expected. He's going to be the deep threat. He's going to be working with the first team, and he's probably going to be pretty damn good for our fantasy teams given his value. So I do, again, say draft DJ Chark in best ball especially, but I think it's worth taking some shots on him too in managed seasonal leagues. Not really much so in Dynasty. I think there's probably better bench plays, but still, he's always produced. He's always produced. So why not with Justin Herbert? I was very excited. Chark in LA. Just think about it. Think about how marketable that is. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jalen McMillan continues to have a great camp. Todd Bowles says since he's come in, he's been making plays since day one. He continues to get better and better, and Bowles likes where he's at right now. Looks like he did out of pads, in pads. So great news. Get Jalen McMillan. I'm officially on board. I've been kind of pussyfooting around because I like Trey Palmer, but it is clear Jalen McMillan is the answer here. Continuously showing up at camp, continuously showing up at rookie OTAs, continuously getting hype from the coaching staff. Jalen McMillan is the plan here. Very good producer at Washington. Sorry it took me so long to come around to it. I wanted to watch it develop. It's developed enough to me at this point. I think it's time to get on the Jalen McMillan train. And lastly, the Los Angeles Rams. We've been talking a little bit about this guy, Jordan Whittington. He has officially earned first-team snaps. So it could be hard for a rookie receiver to earn first-team snaps in training camp, especially on a team as deep as the Rams. But Whittington has been so impressive already that he's gotten opportunities to run with the starters and even made a nice catch against Tre'Davious White last week during reps with the first-team offense. So the Rams might have done it again. Another late-round wide receiver with not much athleticism coming in and showing up early and often for the Los Angeles Rams at camp, Jordan Whittington. Interesting. So that is everything I have for you guys. I'll go through and answer some quick questions. Looks like, is Trey Palmer droppable in Dynasty? I would say not yet. Not yet, just because it takes one injury for him to be usable, and he had a pretty damn good season last year. Even if Rome doesn't get any volume, he's going to make enough kick-ass individual plays that his value won't drop. And that's kind of the big thing, but I think he's going to get a ton of volume. I think he's going to, at worst, be second in the team on targets. I mean, again, I realize that Field is not a good NFL quarterback, but my big argument here is he was not developed. Matt Eberflus is not a quarterback developing coach, right? Matt Nagy? No. What are we talking about here? Just hasn't had an opportunity. Get him while you can. Let's see. I saw someone say something about Caleb Williams that I agreed with. Everyone is way too sure Caleb is going to be great right away, in my opinion. I agree. I actually had a whole episode a few weeks ago of overvalued or mispriced players, and Caleb Williams was one of them. We are all pricing him as if he's going to have a CJ Stroud rookie season. I would like to see it first. I do think he's going to be fine, but I would rather sell him right now and maybe buy back into him later if he proves it. because I think you can get some really good value. You could trade Caleb Williams for Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, Jaden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, and get some nice cherries on top and probably have just as much, if not more, fantasy points from any of those players. Let's see. Penix is going to make some noise in preseason games while Kirk sits, and also some mistakes. I think he will put some pressure, but Kirk Cousins, the answer is the answer this year. I do think, like, a lot of people are saying this is a 2-year deal for Kirk Cousins. I do think it's very possible it is just like a 1-year rental, which is totally fine. Michael Penix comes out here, and that should do it. Although we will say Matt Wadman has Yosis as one of his guys. So yeah, get some Yosis if you can. Any opinion on Freeman over Dowdle in Dallas? Actually, I should have talked about this. I saw a report yesterday that Dowdle is actually looking better than Zeke. So I don't think I know we saw some Royce Freeman hype, but I still think it's going to be Zeke and Dowdle and then Freeman, unless an injury happens, which is totally possible. But I saw a good tweet from Dan Williamson that the biggest threat in Dallas isn't even on the roster yet for the running back room. They are still totally possibly looking at running backs in the free agency market. So I think if anything, you just want Zeke. You might want Dowdle. I'm not really worried about Freeman. I'll use Fab if an injury happens, and then I'll go pick him up. But for now, I wouldn't really worry about it. And that should do it, everyone. I do want to say, if you enjoyed the show, buy me a coffee. I've set up a buy me a coffee page. That is buymeacoffee.com/JFootballWine. Lots of work goes into these shows I mean, we're talking about everything. So if you appreciate it, I appreciate you guys. I do any support you could throw my way. I would highly, highly appreciate it. I understand that, not everyone has money to give, but if you do, and even if it's small, I appreciate anything. But just if you could buy me a coffee, it is set up now. Buymeacoffee.com/JFootballWine. Thank you ahead of time. Maybe go ahead and check that page out. And everyone, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to Player Profiler and Player Profiler News. You can follow me on any social media channel at JFootballWine. You all have a wonderful Wednesday, a terrific rest of your week, and tune in tomorrow as I have a very special guest, Steve Rippey from Fantasy Guides, joining me to break down some of his thoughts from training camp. So you can finally have an episode where I'm not yapping. So thanks again, guys. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.